Hi, I'm James McGuire, editor of Datamation, and our topic today is the future of enterprise IT. How's that for a very big topic? With me today is Jack Gold, a veteran IT pundit. Jack, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
Good, good. And I know you were there in Boston. I know it is chilly. We talked about that. Or you're staying warm, I hope, in chilly Boston.
I'm staying warm. The depressing part's not the temperature. The depressing part is it's dark outside already, and it's only 4:30 here.
Oh, right. Okay. It's 4:30 there, 1:30 obviously in the West Coast. But yeah, the sun just sets too darn early. Tell me, what have been some of your typical coverage areas over the years? Stuff you've delved into pretty deep.
So I've spent the last 20 plus years actually looking at the whole mobility space, wireless, mobile devices, applications, and with a particular focus in the enterprise.
Hmm.
Uh, I also look at the consumer space because, of course, you have to look at the consumer space if you want to find out what's going to happen in the enterprise over the next few years.
Right.
But it's mostly been enterprise focused. I've also looked at security and what's going on in the chip world. Also, spent a lot of time in application and application development, particularly when it has to do with mobility.
Mhm.
Things like total cost of ownership and ROI calculations for businesses, try to figure out what makes sense. So it's been fairly wide ranging, but it's been mostly around the business focus, what enterprises really need to do to stay competitive. And
Yeah.
and moving forward, sorry, I was going to say moving forward as an extension, now that mobile is becoming a mature marketplace, the next phase of mobility and the next really interesting part is the whole world of IoT and what I'm calling EOT, which is the enterprise of things. So there's a separate flavor of things for the enterprise
Right.
versus consumer.
Right. I definitely want to get into the EOT and the IoT, and I certainly want to get into the enterprise mobile, which I think is a very hot sector. But just to start off, obviously we had a big week with the Amazon AWS reInvent this week, and it never fails to amaze me the amount of new features and products that AWS cranks out. I mean, not only the market leader, they crank new stuff out at a remarkable rate. I mean, what are any major takeaways for you this week in terms of Amazon reInvent?
Well, I kind of look at it from a macro level as well as the component level, right? So Amazon is seeing an awful lot of competition.
Right.
Amazon is clearly the leader in cloud, but if you look at other cloud players, Microsoft's making a huge push, particularly on the enterprise, not so much on the general consumer side of things, but they want to be a major enterprise play and are.
Azure is clearly a strong number two, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Google, certainly can't ignore Google.
Right.
IBM from a hybrid cloud perspective for enterprises who already have their WebSphere components, they're becoming a major impact player.
Hmm.
As we know, Oracle just bought a company they bought DIN to try to be more of a cloud player. So the reason I lump all that in is because Amazon's facing increasing competition in a marketplace that prices are falling through the floor. They're
Right.
going
The
down very,
race
very quickly.
to the bottom, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they have to keep adding things, adding features that differentiate themselves. So, they announced an IoT platform this week. They've been playing around sort of with that anyway, but now they've announced that. Intel has partnered with them to try to extend IoT into the Amazon cloud as well. So I think from an Amazon perspective, what I saw this week was a lot of, hey, we want to be competitive. We want to rule the world. There's a lot of room for everybody. They want to maintain their leadership, and the way you maintain your leadership is you allow all kinds of technology for people who need it, no matter what it is. You want to expand. You want to be the next I don't know, the next Target, the next Walmart of the cloud, and
Right.
I think that's really what they're doing.
The thing that surprises me about Amazon is that obviously they're the leader, and that's not undisputed, and there's some strong competition, particularly from Azure. But I don't get the sense that the other players are really truly gaining on Amazon. Amazon has a far lead. It's a couple miles out beyond
Right.
number two, and I don't. It doesn't feel like it's falling behind, and it's in how far up it is. It's not losing ground how far ahead it is.
Well, and I agree with you, and they clearly have the vast majority of market share compared to the other folks. The other folks, though, I think are being smart about what they're trying to do. So, what's Microsoft trying to do with Azure? They want to be in the enterprise. They don't want to be in the consumer space. Why? Because There's more profit margin in the enterprise. Let's be frank.
Right.
The enterprise also needs a lot of components that consumer cloud doesn't really need. Manageability, security, feature sets, analytics, a lot of things that Amazon has, but not to the same extent that Microsoft has. Microsoft's got Office 365 as an add-on, for instance, to Azure and things of that nature. So I think you're seeing a real segmentation in the marketplace. Amazon, AWS is trying to be cloud to everything. Microsoft and to some extent Google and certainly IBM are trying to pick out different segments of the market and say, let's concentrate on those segments and do really well in those and not be everything to everyone.
Right. Of course, Microsoft, to its credit, has enterprise in its DNA, so that'll help with the Azure growth. So, what about enterprise mobile? I mean, what do you see as a couple of big trends in shaping enterprise mobile these days?
So there are a few things going on. Number one is that mobile is really becoming a mature market in most enterprises. If you look back 3, 4, 5 years, it was still kind of emerging. What do we all carried smartphones around, but from a business perspective, what do I actually do with all these smartphones and tablets that are out there? Mm-hmm. That's changed. Most companies today have a solid view of mobility as a key component of their strategy going forward. It's much like web was about maybe a decade ago or 12 years ago when, they really didn't quite know what to do with web. We were all using it. We were all on Google and doing things. But enterprises were still toying with it. And so mobility is there now.
It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, that bring your own device, the companies came to terms with that and they kind of did some allowing of that. In some instances, actually encouraged it. True or false, or has that changed?
Well, they encouraged it and often for the wrong reasons. So they encouraged
to save money.
Right. And you really don't save money. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket. If I'm paying the bill, you're paying the bill. The real issue is if you allow any device in, then you've got to go out and get software like, Good is now BlackBerry, so it's BlackBerry or AirWatch or something, Mobileye or something else to put on it. There's money there. There's increased management requirements. You're going to get more calls to the help desk because it's not your device. So it's not a pure money thing. What BYOD did do, however, is it actually forced corporations, and especially IT departments of the corporations, to deal with mobile. So, for instance, IT was famous for saying, no, we don't want mobile. We can't handle it. We don't have any apps, etc. And execs said, hey, I don't care what you think. I'm getting one. I'm getting one for all my people. And if you won't handle it, there's these guys down the street called, pick your favorite, Mobileye and AirWatch. I don't want to leave anybody out, but right. I'll write them a check every month and they'll take care of it for me.
Yep.
So it really forced the issue. And it was democratization more than be what.
The end result being when the issue got forced.
Yeah, it really was the start of democratization of the IT department, because for a long time IT had near dictatorial capability. They could say yes or no, and it was done. Right. That's not true anymore. Not just in mobile, by the way. The same is true about the cloud. When Salesforce is a great example of this, right? If IT can't provide me an SAP backend and I need to get my business done, I'll write Salesforce a $50 check every month per person, and I got whatever I need.
Right. It's a classic end run around the IT department.
Right. But what it's done is it's forced IT to look at things differently. It's actually forced the entire business to look at things differently. IT cannot be a silo in most organizations, as it was in the past.
Right.
It has to be aligned with business needs and goals. And if it's not, then you've got a real competitive problem within your company.
Well, yeah, you think about the entire term, the shadow IT, where people are in some instances hiring cloud deployments with their division's credit card, and then suddenly there's 18 different cloud deployments for one company, and no one knows why they're all 18 of them exist. But of course, it just means somehow people are getting things done without IT support.
People need to get their jobs done, and if you don't provide them the tools to do it, they will go out and find tools to do it themselves.
Right.
That's really the bottom line.
So what about, did you finish about the hot mobile trends? I don't want to interrupt you on that. You may have.
Oh, yeah. Well, so there are a number of them, but actually one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest trends in mobility now is that people are still, after all these years, trying to figure out how to secure mobility. It's still very insecure. It's gotten worse And the reason it's gotten worse is because not only are there more factors affecting the security trend, but there's more data involved. So when you're checking your email on a mobile device and someone takes over your mobile device, they can check your email. Okay, yeah, that's a problem, but it's not that big of a problem, unless you're, I don't know, Hillary Clinton. But
right, let's not go there. Right?
Yeah, we're not going to go there. But
yeah.
it's a limited problem. Today, what people are doing with their mobile devices is they're getting into corporate systems. So all the back-end systems are connected up. Right. And so if I take over your device and I become you, I can get into SAP, I can get into corporate systems, I can get into HR, I can mess around with the data. Data breaches are a very, very expensive part of doing business as usual. And our estimation, we've done a lot of surveys on this stuff. I'll give you a statistic around security, mobile security. We asked, we did a survey of about 250 companies, and we asked whether or not they've ever had a mobile security breach on a smartphone or a tablet, or they've never had one, or they don't know. And about 64%, if I remember the number correctly, said they either never had one or didn't know. Now, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Those people have their head in the sand.
Right. It's wishful thinking. It's pretty to think so, but it's not real.
Of course not. If you ask users, they'll all tell you, oh yeah, well, something happened a while ago, but
I've been hacked. Yeah.
Right. So that's a real significant issue, because if you think about the average cost of a true hack, you're talking about millions of dollars in corporations.
Right.
Sometimes tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
And so that becomes a real issue. So companies are dealing with that. The other issue with mobility is where it's going next, right? So we talked about IoT and EOT. That's really kind of the next phase and that's the next phase of BYOD as well, is I'm going to bring stuff in.
So when you say where it's going next and bringing stuff in, what do you mean by that? Where is enterprise mobile going next?
So today, pretty much anybody who wants one has a smartphone.
Right.
They probably have a tablet. They probably have a PC if they want it. Tomorrow, it's going to be the smart screen in your car.
Okay.
It's going to be whatever other device you try to bring in. It's going to be, today I happen to have a band on, right? This fitness band. Lots of people wear them.
Yeah,
right?
I've got a Fitbit myself. Yep.
There you go. This one's a Samsung, but
same thing. Yeah.
Your favorite, sure.
Right. It emails me, by the way. My wearable device emails me, which I think is kind of cute.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
No one else will talk to you. That's why. No, I'm just joking. Just joking.
Thank you.
But the point is that all of these devices are going to be around, and we're going to want to do things with them. So, for instance, when we all have smartphones, smart devices, smart screens in our cars, and you're a salesperson on the road, why wouldn't the company want to know where you are right now so they can route you to an emergency situation, right?
Right.
Or monitor how many companies you visited today, just to get and it's not a negative thing, and people see this as privacy issues, and to some extent I suppose it is, but it's also about being able to build an efficient model for how I utilize my people, right? Fitbits, same kind of thing. Smartwatches, same kind of thing. But we don't know where this is going. They're going to be smart everything's out there.
Indeed.
And those are going to generate data and also tap into data to make us more efficient.
And then as a side question, the question is where we're going to store all that data and how are we going to actually analyze it? But that may be a discussion for a different day.
Well, and that's the $64,000 question from an old TV show, right? Because that really is the issue. The things are no big deal.
Right. We could generate an ocean of data. Where do we store it, and what does it really mean?
And we should have that discussion, because I'm spending a lot of time now with analytics and business intelligence and machine learning. And the whole point of having any of this stuff is really two words from a corporate perspective: actionable intelligence.
Okay.
Because if I can't figure out what to do with this data and build something that lets me figure out what to do with it and take action to increase my business, why am I doing it?
Indeed. We should clarify what you mean by enterprise of things. Obviously, IoT we know, we should touch on that, but what do you mean when you say the enterprise of things?
So when I talk about enterprise of things, it's the distinction I would make, I guess, is your personal phone versus a business, a phone that you use for business, right?
Right.
So
okay.
They're different apps. Your personal device may or may not be secure. A corporate device has to be secure. The management of your personal devices, oh yeah, I don't like that app, I'm dumping it, versus a corporate device where they have to have a management suite on it that make sure that the apps are up to par, you have the right apps, they're secured, they're connected in through a VPN.
Right.
So it's all the kinds of things we talked around with corporate phones have to move into the things space as well. That's kind of what I mean by enterprise of things. They're updatable, they're manageable, they're secure. Some of these things are going to stay in the field for 5 to 7 years, so they have to be robust. We're not talking about $2 throwaway sensors. We're talking about something real.
Right. Right. Um, Speaking of hardware, Moore's law. I know we had talked about that the other day. Remind me of your thought about Moore's law. Like how is it progressing with Moore's law?
So people have been predicting the end of Moore's law for years.
Right.
And we keep finding ways around it. Moore's law basically says that the number of transistors on a chip will double every 2 years, and they'll also get a lot smaller because of the ability of companies like Intel and ARM and Qualcomm and others to shrink stuff, to just make it smaller and smaller, which means they cost less, not necessarily, but they should cost less, and they use less power, which is also a key component.
Right.
The problem is that physics being physics, transistors eventually can only get so small. You can't shrink them forever.
Right. There's a limit to
Right.
nanotechnology, whatever. Right.
Exactly. And we keep stretching the limit, and people have said we were going to reach that limit 4 or 5 years ago. We're still there. Intel has now said they've got a path to at least another 2 or 3 generations of shrinking. Beyond that, we don't know.
Yeah.
But the point is that Moore's law is is not just about shrinking transistors and shrinking chips. It's more about how do we increase with each generation the productivity and capability of these devices. Some of that is done through the shrinking of the transistors, but some of it is just done architecturally. I've done a better job of building whatever function I'm building into that chip. It's a better design, it's a better algorithm, it's whatever. And so I think that's going to go on for some period of time. But at some point, we're going to get to the point where it's harder and harder. It's already there, but it's harder and harder and more expensive to build out these smaller devices. Look, a new semiconductor fab these days is in the $5 to $7 to $8 billion range.
Right.
You don't just go put those up in petty cash anymore.
Right.
So it becomes a real issue. But Moore's law is one of those things where we're leading, and then we're leading to the next generation. People are starting to talk about, can we get to quantum computing, which is a whole different model.
Right.
That's still a decade or more out, but it's an interesting model as well. So technology always keeps progressing. It's just how fast can we do it?
Indeed, and sometimes that answer is open-ended, and there's a certain amount of chaos to that answer.
Of course,
there's a lot of good stuff. I guess if you would point to maybe 1 or 2 things you think are going to happen in the next, say, 3 to 5 years, or 1 to 3 years, perhaps. Trends, like an emerging thing. If there's a theoretical IT manager out there, that individual wants to keep up with what's going on, what should that person be looking at, for the next, say, 1, 3, 5 years?
Okay, so let me segment it in a couple of different areas. So let me start with the wireless world, right? Mm-hmm. So in the next by 2020 or so, we're going to have 5G wireless capability at least in North America and many other parts of the world.
Right.
What that's going to mean is everyone talks about 5G as being more bandwidth, and it will have more bandwidth in certain instances, but it will also be much more robust. It will be able to handle a lot more devices. And when you start talking about the EOT world, we're talking about probably an order of magnitude more devices in EOT than we find today in mobility.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have to connect all these devices and send data around. So 5G becomes a key component of that. It's going to be a gradual upgrade, but it's something that you should be looking at. More bandwidth, more devices, but also some slower bandwidth for these devices that don't need a lot of bandwidth, but more robustness, etc. Less latency, which is very important, because if you're sending stuff out to a device and it takes 13 seconds, you're in trouble. It's got to take 13 milliseconds or 13 microseconds, even better.
Right. A half second of latency is forget it. You can't use it.
Exactly. So that's one thing that's coming that IT people should be looking at. Second thing around security. I talked a little bit about security earlier, and security with things is going to be very, very difficult. So security is moving from a model of, I got security on my PC, the old days of Symantec and McAfee, right, into one that is much more oriented towards looking at what's going on in the network, trying to evaluate what's actually happening in real time, and then trying to figure out whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So it's modeling, it's analytics, it's crowdsourcing. It's looking across all the networks and figuring out what's going on, and trying to see if there are bad actors out there trying to do something nasty to my systems, and then cutting them off. Because right now, this is a compelling statistic. Most of the time in big corporations, the time from an infection, a security breach, until the time it's detected is 6 months. That's the average.
Wow. Okay. I would never have guessed to be that long. That's
It's
shocking.
huge. And in some cases, well, look what happened at Yahoo 2 years before they even announced it. They knew about it.
Yeah.
But it took them a couple of months to detect it. So we've got to find different ways, different paths to security. The other piece that companies are going to have to deal with in a big way over the next 3 to 4 years, 5 years, is analytics, business intelligence, machine learning, because we're getting to the point for most workers where there's so much information coming at them, and companies have so much information they're generating, you can't deal with it.
Right.
There's got to be some machine assistance to be able to deal with that. And I mentioned earlier, actionable intelligence. I've got to pull stuff out of that data so that I can then do whatever it is I have to do. Fix a machine, make a better sale, whatever it's going to be. So those are, 3 really key areas, I think, that are coming.
Big stuff, to be sure. Jack,
it'll be exciting.
Exciting at least, if not even more than exciting.
Indeed.
Jack, thank you very much. I will send you the link. We can all tweet it, and lot of good stuff. Thanks for talking with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.